Hi, dear improvisers. Welcome back to In Conversation. My name is Jakaš Kapin, currently in Slovenia, the producer of The Well, and this is our bi weekly conversation series. Each time we are here with one special member of the global vocal improvisation community, chatting about their work, about their practice, their approach, and also touching on some larger themes that relate to singing and improvisation. As always, you're also very welcomed to visit thewellvocal.com, where you can find the global map, event listing, resources page, and also become a member. It's free, and you can also donate to help support what The Well does and upload your events, tell your friends, and anyone else. So today we're gonna talk to Stacey Renee from Chicago about her work as a songwriter, vocal improviser, abolitionist, educator, and me and Stacey are also really good friends. So this is gonna be probably one of the most relaxed conversations. I don't know, but let's see. Let's see if Stacey.
Hello?
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I just started to have a moment when you sent me that message. I'm like, what do you mean the live? What are you talking about?
Oh,
In
I
the
thought it was
live.
so organized. I I don't know. Sometimes when it's with friends in these conversations, I don't even send the full instructions. I'm just like, see you in the live, see you online. You'll figure it out. You'll receive something, and then we're gonna have a chat, and that's it.
It's great.
Oh, nice.
I'm a little bit of a well, I'm a millennial ex-cusper. So
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I am always like one step behind when it comes to technology. And this is my first live ever that I've been um I've tried to join, but like that I am being interviewed for. So I'm excited, a little nervous. Hi, Rosie. Hello.
Welcome. Welcome to this live that's gonna live forever online on multiple websites and platforms. We'll be fine. We'll
That's
be
great.
fine. We haven't chatted in a while though, so we have a lot to go through. But for the sake of this conversation, maybe just tell the people listening what you're up to at the moment in terms of improvisation, what's your background, what are you mostly excited about right now. And we just start from there and then spread out.
Okay. Well, I, before I do that, I just want to say your hair looks super cute. I love it.
Thank you. Yours too. When you joined, like the first thing was the volume. I mean, going this way.
Yes, it's getting really big. I haven't cut it. Anyways, vocal improvisation. I mean, I think that for me, I have been vocally improvising since I was a little girl. Like, I remember talking and singing are the same for me. Like there's never been a distinct moment where I was like, and now I'm a singer. It is absolutely a piece of how I self-soothe. Um, so much so I have this, and there's been ebbs and flows in my life, as you know, of times when I've been more active as a performer, as a songwriter, um, and then, but I never ever stopped singing. And I remember when I went to college, I would sing myself to sleep because there was, I was away from home, and it's so soothing for me. And I remember one night I was singing, and I guess I was louder than I thought because usually it would be kind of quiet. I want to disturb my roommates or the people in the dorm. And this dude knocked on the door, and he kept knocking and kept knocking, kept knocking. Finally, I was in bed. I got up out of bed. I'm like, what? And he said, "Oh, I thought you were home because I heard the radio on."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "No, that was just me." Like, which leads me to like improvisation. It's like a run. I feel like I have a running radio in my head at all moments that pull from all the different pieces of my identity. Um, and currently, the way that it is manifesting in my life is through um, two projects. One is I have a collaborative vocal improv group called Tender. So we get together and play, and then also um, with my band. And even though it's song I write, there's always space for improvisation, both with the band, vocally, and I'm teaching now. So I've been teaching a lot of students who are like dabbling into the jazz idiom, and starting off with that as a way to improvise,
Mhm.
because it's what they know, but also as my way to stick my foot in there and be like, and there's this whole other world. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. When you were mentioning the self-soothing, is that something that you saw modeled from your parents or someone else? Do you think, like, where do you trace its origins to? The fact that that was just something natural. Okay, I'm gonna do this with my voice. Is it because of you being Stacy? Is it from somewhere else?
Hmm. Well, neither of my parents sing, and in fact, I mean, I'm in the school of everybody can sing. Not well, but everybody can sing.
So just keep doing it, and you will get there.
And neither of my parents, love you, dad, rest in peace, mom, really had a nice voice, like at all. But my dad is a musician, he's a drummer and a songwriter. So music and like jam sessions were
Hmm.
always super a part of my life. Like I have early memories of being at jam sessions with my dad, blues jam sessions mostly. So, but as far as I, I think it's a spiritual thing. Like I
Hmm.
just hum to myself and the vibration helps me chill the fuck out. Can we cuss on live? Okay.
Of course. Well, hopefully. I mean, we should try and see what the verge is when they kick us out of it. I don't think we should like stay low because we should see like what the tipping point is.
Yeah.
So you go for
Well,
it.
I'm good at saying shit that probably shouldn't be said. Hey Ron, what's up? That's one of my dad's old friends and my friend too. He was in my band for a while. Also
That's
amazing.
amazing and came in exactly at the moment when you were talking about your dad and the jam sessions.
Yeah, and Ron is an amazing guitar player. Like just kills it. So shout out to Ron.
So the title of this conversation was Voice in Politics. Very ominous. So I guess we should just get straight into it. You're in the United States right now, in Chicago. You've actually worked in politics. You can kind of explain, that background. We've had conversations before about many things in terms of like identity, voice, politics. I remember you saying how you were actually bringing, vocal improvisation into the office, like as a one practical example. But with everything that's going on in the United States, I don't know how far into it we actually want to go, but maybe whatever is present to you and that you think relates to the use of voice in this way, would love to, yeah, see how you're doing with everything at your job, outside of your job.
Okay, well, couple of updates. I quit my job.
Great. I mean, is it good? Yeah, good, right?
It's amazing. I mean, you've heard some of the agony, and it's not because I wasn't working for incredible people. I have had the privilege to work in and out of nonprofits, paid and unpaid, for about 20 years in movements for justice, and specifically um, transformative justice and healing justice with an abolitionist frame, meaning working to end violence against um, BIPOC folks, queer and trans BIPOC folks, people on the margins, disabled folks, um, outside of using mechanisms of the state, so outside of the police, and because oftentimes these systems that say that they help us hurt us, and and simultaneously I've had this life of a musician, and my dream has always been to try to integrate them, because I believe that as we are in this fucking hellish fight against global capitalism and the rise of fascism, there's always been violence in this country, especially against marginalized people, but it is increasing. It's becoming really scary to speak out. They're criminalizing students. and disappearing people in ways that I had to actually question when I was thinking about coming onto this live with you, just like, what do I say in terms of protection? But I refuse to be silenced, and I refuse to live my life in fear. So but this is a history. This is like the history of this country was built on slavery and colonizing folks. And at the root of that is stripping, in order to instill fear in us so that we don't talk to each other, we don't connect, and we don't, you know, build community. One of the ways to build community is through song and ritual. And the first thing that they start to take away from us is our songs, our language, our connection to ritual. And so that piece of my work is sort of ever present in trying to connect to my roots in this, and reclaim some of the music that was stolen. And particularly with song, it's not just about reclaiming ancestry, and connecting to those roots so that we can, but also as a method to fight back. So like right now in the protesting in solidarity with Palestine and the war on Gaza and the genocide, there's like choirs for justice, right, that are using song as a way to be in the streets, to spread messages, always in popular and folk music, which can be one and the same. There's messages of resistance and solidarity. And I also think that there is a way that if we make sure that this music doesn't die and sing together, all of the music in resistance, protest music, resistance music, ancestral music, that we have this way of time traveling. It's something that I learned from this conference I went to years ago. They were talking about Sun Ra and Afrofuturism and how Black folks in the US can time travel, because with the music, there is a way that while you're singing Black music, Black American music, you can speak to the future and the past and the present all at the same time, because these songs are carried over, and then also changed based on whatever is happening in the moment, like improvisation.
Yeah. So, a creative question for you.
Mm-hmm.
All of your experience of organizing and this idea of bridging the gap, right, between resistance movements and improvisation. If someone would give you the space or the resources or a grant for a dream project that would bring them together, what would that be for Stacy? Like, I don't know, right now.
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. So good. Um, well, when I was really mostly doing activism and organizing work, I would bring song into it. So like I would run meetings and start with a song, end with a song. Um, but now I have more tools to, like, through all of the training with um, Rhiannon, um, and to bring people into singing together. So before it was like, I'm going to sing this song as a way to open and close this meeting. And now it's like, okay, let's collectively make music. And so an ideal project would be, okay, so one of the things I think we're facing as we are fighting this fascist government is like, honestly, how to get along. Solidarity is something that is so important, and it's a buzzword, but we have to talk to people, and maybe people that we don't like, in order to fight against this mammoth of repression. And so some of that is really around nervous system, like calming your nervous system. And I think singing can do that. And it doesn't have to necessarily be explicit. So I would love to be able to bring vocal sound, participatory vocal sound baths to groups that were fighting for justice. I've been doing this thing I call an experiment with my friend Cecily, because we haven't been advertising it. We're inviting friends once a month for 6 months, and we're collecting like what we call data, which is just like, hey, how was that for you? We're collecting data to, and it's a vocal sound bath, but it's not performative. So I'm not up there with gongs.
Yes.
Did I keep it real about gongs, Yaka?
Gongs are expensive.
Anyway,
I mean, that's as much as I know. No, I love them, but hard to carry and, so on.
yeah, but there's also this like culturally appropriative thing too, where it's like, you know, are they Tibetan? I don't even know if like, they're named Tibetan gongs. I'm not sure if that's actually the origin. Um, they're really nice and beautiful. I've had great experiences. I'm not saying don't use them, but that's, anyways, I just got on a whole nother tangent. So we've been doing these local sound baths where you gather our friends, the folks sit in a circle and one person receives, but the idea is that everybody gives and receives, and we create an improvised sound bath just with the voice.
Hmm.
And so the experiment is like, can you intuitively, so it's not like I'm coming to someone and saying, oh, like my shoulders hurt. Can you like sing into my shoulder in terms of like a prescriptive treatment? But can we collectively sing to each other and intuit what the person needs through sound and words and rhythm, right? Um, and these sessions have been so beautiful, and lots comes up for people, but there's no need to talk. You don't have to come and say anything that you're dealing with. And I've been in so many organizational cultures and movement work where it's like there's conflict. Conflict is human. And some of the work is around figuring out how to calm your nervous system enough so that you can receive and receive like critical feedback, and be in conversation with yourself and accountable to yourself, without being in the like fight or flight mode. And I think my personal experience, like from the work that I've done, I mean, Murmurations, the round one with the original 26, so much of that was a healing journey for me. And also like, you know, taking the time away from some really traumatic and chaotic stuff that was happening in my life to just check in
Hmm.
with my body and be in essentially a sound bath, giving and receiving for 2 weeks. So my dream project is to do that with
Do
groups
that.
that are, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and just for people that might not know the Murmuration Project, it's something that we did together with Rhiannon and Margie Gillis in Montreal. And yeah, it was a kind of a voice and movement residency. And they can also check a little video, which is really great on YouTube. You can just type in the Murmuration Project, Rhiannon or Margie Gillis, and it's gonna come up. Yeah, and sometimes with instruments or not, with gongs or not, whatever it might be. But voice at the center, right?
Yeah.
So then on to this relationship between improvisation, voice, and identity. I remember we had some really interesting conversations already in between All the Way In, which is a program we did together with Rhiannon. And I guess it's something that I'm thinking a lot about, especially in relationship to our community, how tied it is to American Black music through Bobby, but through also so many other people, and what that means for the language of improvisation that we use, practice, teach. It's something that came up in the Zoom with Rhiannon in January, and it was this whole idea of creating an authentic improvisational language. She was talking about how sometimes, when we improvise, we might actually recognize that it is things that are taken from somewhere else. And I guess the first idea is, how would we get to the stage where we are recognizing what might be taken from somewhere else and then take a step back and kind of this idea of creating, a language that is true to ourselves in that moment. But it's also a broader question of how we approach improvisation. There's things that we have already received, they're already part of our system, and they're coming out in improvisation. So how would you say, or what would you share about making this process accountable with a certain overview or with a certain relationship to the systems in which we're in that have already, mean that all of those things are within us. So how do we move onwards from here with more accountability or with more thought to those systems and how we want to relate to them? It's a very, I'd said it in a very non-simplified way, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. Ooh, that's a big one.
Hmm.
And I
That's why we're
think,
here.
yeah, I mean, um, two things that I believe are that everything is political, and that, as my friend Shira Hassan says, everything is practice. So when we are in the space improvising with other people and groups, politics, not politics like electoral politics, but like the politics of who's in power, why, who benefits from what is considered, you know, the ruling class, and the markers of how to be to stay in power, that shows up in our improvisation. It doesn't mean that somebody is actively participating, but we all are, because we live in this world, and we are, players, and we didn't ask to be born to who we were born to, but those identities exist. So um, what I would love is for the practice of circle singing, of no more circle singing so white, my friend. I mean, it's just the truth. I'm speaking my truth, right?
Is that
Like,
is that a slogan for a t-shirt?
no more circle singing so white. um, I mean, the way
But
the
tell me what you
so
mean. Yeah, by
okay, so
that.
what I mean is that what I see, that group improvised singing is spans the globe culturally. Race is a social construction outside of race, culture. It's everywhere, and it's important, and it's vibrant, and it's a part of movements for resistance, cultural work. However, for some reason, in my context in the U.S. and maybe a little bit of what I see in Europe, it just really attracts people who are like, oh, that's a lot of white folks. And now, is there anything wrong with that? No. But then what happens is, when you are, my experience as a Black woman coming into the space, um, there's issues around safety. Is it safe to move my body the way that feels authentic to me? Is it going to be romanticized? Is it going to be uh, over sexualized? Is it safe to sing like R&B pop shit from the 90s? Is it going to be frowned upon as not, you know, good music, or like powerful music? Because I'm an 80s baby. Like, I love Mariah Carey and Whitney and all that shit, like, it is a part of my personal language. But there isn't, and no one has ever shut me down, but I do think that depending on who's in the room, the music and the personal language will be different. And I know, and it seems like there's often a majority of one type of person in the room, who maybe is drawing from, um, who doesn't, yeah, who, and it creates just not a lot of diversity, I think, in sound or a safe
Yeah.
space. Like, I had, yeah, I mean, I've had a hard time, honestly. Like, I think the the spiritual work, in terms of having the embodied practice at Murmurations, was really, felt like it healed me in many ways. I mean, healing isn't just a one-stop shop, but I really needed that. But that shit was really, really, really hard. And to be, um, one of a few in the lineage, because the conversation is different. There is what I think happens is then the folks who tend to, not intentionally, but the folks who are already in power in this country, or um, whose identity benefits from who's in power, tend to be the loudest and have the most um, influence in, not just in the musical conversation as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say that what I've been thinking about is that, of course, in Western society, where the practices of collective singing are not as prevalent, there is that need for connection through the body. So there's the need of whiteness to find some grounding and find connection that is missing in its own culture, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then there's just how how do you practice that, or with what kind of awareness, like where are you drawing from? And in essence, I feel like some of those spaces are created just from the pure need for it, right? But then there's a real question of what is practice in those spaces, how open they are, how much of what we've been talking about is part of the conversation, is said at the beginning or at end or at any point, and
Hmm.
how much we believe that music is music and things will, however, kind of even out with through the process, and we're all gonna, kind of merge together in oneness through that only, or how much we're relating it to like outside societal constructs in which we live in. I think it's possible to kind of do both. I think it's really possible to have an awareness of, yeah, in which context is it practiced, and that can be said, and then at the same time have a very free experience, because it's not as if we are saying, or you're saying, or I'm saying that that's something that you would be aware the whole time you're singing, and that would kind of overwhelm, the actual activity. But I think a lot of the times is about what happens before or after, or how much of this is discussed, yeah, around the music, really. And then that would, of course, maybe at the beginning feel like extra work, or something that is going to take away from the music, or something that's going to interfere. But if not there, what better space to talk about it than before singing? Is to open up something that might be uncomfortable to you, or that might be in a position where you might feel like you have to protect yourself or defend yourself, or if someone might be asking about why is your music sounding like a tribe from Africa, and you're from wherever, I don't know, from Germany. It's just an example. Germany is a bad
Hmm.
example. Anyways, but you know what I mean? I mean, all kinds of questions could come up in that sense. But I think what better place to have them rather than alongside, that musical experience. And that seems like a lot of work maybe to someone listening, but I think it's integral for, yeah, how we continue, and in what kind of grounding we're positioning vocal improvisation as a practice, and how far reaching it will be, and what kind of effect it can have in the end, like also on society and
Yeah.
ourselves.
Well, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about solidarity. Solidarity is like the antidote, yeah, to fear and to repression. Together we are stronger, and you have to build community. So I think as we build community, um, and people keep coming back, you start to build relationships. Relationships are like currency. If we don't feel a trusting relationship in a safe place with someone, you're not going to be able to unpack this shit because it's uncomfortable. um I feel like I can unpack stuff with you because we've done this deep work together, like I trust that what you're saying is from the heart, that you are doing your own work, that like even if something sticky or weird would come up, that it's like there's so much love there, but we've literally put in the hours and the work building community together. And so I think as you're building circle singing communities, then as a leader, you should be committed
Hmm.
to creating um, a values within the culture. So on your, if you have a website, like what is your practice rooted in? Do you have community agreements around how people are going to treat each other? Do you have community agreements about what kind of space you want to create around inclusivity? You know, do you say the agreements at the beginning of the session, like as ritual, like in this space, we you know, like things that are important around honoring roots, around um, creative exploration, around I don't know, like at one point COVID protocols, like we, you know, like how inclusive are we, mask, no mask, can folks sit down, like stuff around disability. And so there's just a host of things that as you are a leader and people start to come back, you are building the trust that you're being responsive. We had an experience actually with Chicago circle singing. At one point, I was one of the main facilitators. I'm not anymore, but we had someone who's a friend, who I'm not going to name, who's a friend now, but we met essentially through building this community. We had a lot of repeat people who were coming, and I think they still are. I mean, Chicago circle singing is blowing up in the most amazing way. And they were really uncomfortable with being filmed because we had, you know, singing is so vulnerable. And for some people who don't do it all the time, it's like, it's a big fucking deal. And some folks don't want to have that type of a camera in their face, you know, while they're like doing this brave thing that could be really scary, which I totally understand. And we were at the beginning and we didn't really have a lot of like agreements and values around what is the type of space that we want to create. So this person was having a really hard time, ended up, I think, leaving the space that day. I had a few calls with her around like one, taking accountability, like, yeah, we were not explicit about our camera video protocol. We didn't ask for consent in the beginning. Now they do, right? Like, so being responsive. And, you know, at the end of the conversation, her saying that she felt really heard and that we were going to, and I said, we're going to do our best to create different types of spaces. That can only happen, those kinds of hard conversations, because we're building relationships. And I'm like saying, as a leader, I'm not going to be dismissive. I'm going to be here with you and try to be responsive to what folks in the community are needing, and being explicit about you know, values that are important to you as circle singer leaders. And I think one of them should be naming the roots of improvisation in the context of place and the context of the lineage of circle singing as we know it, like via like Bobby and them, you know, like that
Bobby and
definitely
them.
come.
No, but really, and sometimes I also think that just naming the person, let's say Bobby or Rhiannon, is not necessarily enough, because they have their. I mean, with Rhiannon, all the work we did, like she says exactly the same thing. The singing is always political, and we always kind of have this part of a session that directs the singing to someone, a particular cause, a particular thing that's happening in the world. And even if Bobby not might be political himself in a way that he talks about circle singing or he talked about it in the past, you know, it's deeply rooted in American Black music. And I think that fact is not just something to say, that's my influence, but I think it brings back a lot of things that are important to how then it is practiced. And I think even just answering that question for yourself might be a really good starting point, just to consider what's actually happening. And also then going back to, we're talking about the safety in the circle. I think sometimes all this extra work also boils down to the fact that, are you there to feel good within yourself and have this amazing experience for yourself, or are you there for something more than that, right? Because you could say that I view this experience as something that I want to come and feel good, and something that would improve my well-being. And a lot of times it is about that and no more. But then
Mhm.
extending it to solidarity, extending it to more than that, I think it's essential. Otherwise, it's just another one of the whatever well-being tools of the global industry, right? That's
Yeah.
gonna make you feel better. Like singing would then just make you feel better. Great, I'm feeling great, and now I'm going home and doing whatever I'm doing in my
Hmm.
life.
Yeah.
Um, and lastly, the collective decision making. I would say, from my experience of building that in the UK with the UK Vocal Import Collective, that that shit just takes ages, and it's great, but it takes a lot more
Mhm.
investment from you and a lot of time. And that's then when the questions come to mind back to the values of your activity. Like, what would you prioritize in that sense? And I think I really understand all the different decisions that people make. And sometimes it's great that there's one person leading the project and you're doing it and there's clarity. But just to know and have the awareness of how would it be if the decisions are made collectively, and what does that mean to you? How do you relate to that paradigm? I think it's a important thing to think about.
Yeah. It does take time. I'm actually in a process right now. My two other vocalists, Michelle Thomas and Emmy Bean, also improvisers, in creating this project called The Nest. And one of the things that we have been spending a lot, we just had a retreat on Sunday. We spent 8 hours talking about our values and what we're rooted in. And like the first thing on the list is singing is resistance, singing is cultural work. All voices are important. We talked a lot about decolonization of specifically, most of us are rooted in jazz, and um, or our entry point into improvisation was the jazz world. And so um, we are being explicit, and we want to bring people and build a community where it's explicit that the roots of the music is Black American music that was also a part of resistance and solidarity. That the and that we have to honor that, if you're gonna roll with us. So and it's not done. Like we did it for 8 hours and then we typed it up, and now we're all still talking about it. Like, what words do we want to use? What brings people in? What should we be explicit about versus like, you know, do we want to
Mhm.
use the word decolonial? Because decolonial politics, um, anything regarding race scares people. And especially right now, if you're doing this from the US base, like they're banning books. The whole anti-DEI movement is about suppressing culture, so we can forget who we are and submit. And so, um, and I just thank you so much for saying like it's you, it's not just about self-soothing, right? It should be political. So another thing too is like I think there's this movement in circle singing that I've seen with workshops, which I think is great, of bringing in folk songs from your culture and
Mhm.
connecting to your ancestry. Um, that should be a part of it. Like maybe as you're building leadership with a community that keeps coming back, to have people bring in folk songs to learn and then chop and screw and improvise off of that, right? Like, and
Mhm.
say like this is from my ancestry, and here's what I learned, and so it's also like honoring the folks in the room too. And I mean that's a huge piece of, I think, I don't know about uh what people are doing in like white people, I'm not racist spaces anymore, but I think my friend who was doing it for a while was talking about like you have to connect to your own lineage, and realize that you also had, like your people at one point had a migration story, and even though maybe you're disconnected from it, it's important so that you can be rooted in something and not be stealing other people's shit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm currently doing my family tree because you also know how white people can be obsessed with that and genealogy, you know. So I'm trying not to enjoy it too much. No, but in reality, what I'm finding through the research is that a lot of things are just under the surface. So it also seems as if it has been lost, like the practices are not there. And sometimes they really are if you actually are looking at it hard enough. So there's also the illusion that that has been lost. But actually, you know, because of the political systems, a lot of things were like written down and recorded and are in archives. And it is really sometimes just about the work, you know, and especially while we're living in these online bubbles, sometimes it's especially about the work of reaching out because it seems like it's one thing that is separate. And then if you do more digging, there's actually a lot more links and interlinking going on than you thought, you know,
Mhm.
in your own cultural background. So I totally agree. Oh,
Yeah, that makes me think of this author that I'm into, Aurora Levins Morales, who is healing justice, disability justice writer, um, I think poet, and wrote this book called his, or maybe it was an article called "Historian as Curandera," which in Spanish means healer. And I used to teach the principles of historian as curandera with my students. I also taught them a whole unit on protest music. I taught history for 3 years. I've done a lot of things. Um, and one of the things that she talks about is like there's all this stuff that's under the surface that is actually not as deep as you think. Like it's right in front of your face through food and language and ways of being. And music and things that were passed down, and if you just start to uncover a little and ask questions and reach out, like it'll illuminate so much. But that's part of the colonized mind, is like having you also think that it's gone, like I'm American now. No, you're fucking not. What does that even mean? And I'm saying this as someone who is 3 generations on both sides of my family Chicago. So I have deep Chicago pride, but I'm always, um, despite my dysfunctional ass family, like trying to find out about the roots through music, because it helps me feel grounded, um, and connected to something outside of this really vapid American culture. I think that's why I was so attracted to bomba music, which is
mhm.
also a huge piece of my practice. Also, there's improvisation in bomba, but my partner's Puerto Rican, and I have been practicing bomba, Afro Puerto Rican folkloric music tradition, for about 10 years. And it's, I think, one of the reasons why I was so attracted to it is because it's this oral living history, and there's lots of questions in the songs and the language, but at the end of the day, um, it's like all this stuff at your fingertips about who you are. You can't forget who you are, because then there's a piece of your humanity, I think, that gets taken away when that happens.
Yeah. You know, and also your ability to relate outward, right? And then relate musically in the end. I think some of that research can give you an extraordinary way of relating musically. And as you said, that example of someone bringing a song from their ancestors, sharing it with a group, how different that is sometimes also to just improvising, which it can be truly amazing. But as we also discovered in the memorization process, that idea of bringing the song takes it to a different level.
Yeah,
And I think also brings in that specificity, right? So that actually it's grounded in an ecology, in a culture, in a geography, and all the rest. Yeah, and
yeah,
in real people.
for sure.
Tracy, thank you so much. I thank you so much for coming, for being up for this, for sharing your practice and sharing very openly. I'm really glad we had this conversation. It feels like just the beginning. Hopefully, there's more to come.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Oh man, I just love you so much, Yaka. I love that. First of all, I'm just really honored that you asked me. Um, I do have a lot to say about this. At first, I was like, "What am I gonna
oh,
say?" And
come
then I'm
on.
like, "Oh," but I also don't want it to come off like I have all the answers. Like I
Yeah,
am. This is a conversation, so I would love to be brought back for part two. Maybe with somebody else. Maybe with someone from, a different musical lineage, and like and unpack all of this and
yeah,
continue to grow. So
yeah. Thank you for the dialogue. I love you too. Good luck in your freelance music teaching career. And everyone is very welcome to come and check your music, maybe see you live there in Chicago, connect with you. And we'll be back for another conversation very soon on this page. And thank you for this chat.
Yeah, of
Sending
course.
you lots of love.
Again soon. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.